GAIN is called Green Aviation Insights, and essentially it's twofold. One thing is it's a collaboration of different air navigation service providers that exist across the world. And then it's also the development of a new tool. And that tool will actually be able to have clear dashboards and show efficiencies of airspace. So it will actually highlight to these air navigation service providers how they could actually improve their airspace and realise efficiencies. It will also obviously highlight things like the actual CO2 emissions as well within their airspace, both by individual airlines, by routes, by sectors.
Welcome to Sustainability in the Air, the world's first podcast dedicated to sustainable aviation. I'm your host, Shashank Nigam, the CEO of Simply Flying. On this show, I speak with aviation leaders, innovators, and policymakers driving real action, separating the signal from the noise to spotlight what's truly moving the industry forward. The same focus that is at the heart of our new book, Sustainability in the Air, Volume 2. In it, Dirk Singer and I take stock of how far the industry has come and how far we still need to go. With the global carbon budget potentially running out by 2032, the clock is ticking. But the most promising solutions today aren't just environmentally sound, they are economically superior as well. From SAF and contrail mitigation to direct air capture, the book offers a practical roadmap for aviation's journey to net zero. Get your copy today. Link in the show notes. My guest today is Rachel Gardner-Poole, the GAIN Steering Group Chair and Sustainable Aviation Consultant at NATS, the UK's leading provider of air traffic control services. At NATS, Rachel is helping shape GAIN, or Green Aviation Insights Network, a global collaboration bringing together air navigation service providers from Malaysia to South Africa to Azerbaijan, all working to make flights more efficient today, not decades from now. In our conversation, Rachel and I talk about why airspace is one of the fastest and most overlooked climate tools in aviation, and how GAIN's new dashboard could help countries identify hotspots, redesign flight paths, and cut millions of tons of carbon with very small changes. Rachel, it's great to have you back on the show. One of the very few people who have been back on the show in the last 3 years. But you keep doing very exciting things, from the CAA to the UK Space Agency to, when we spoke, you were leading the Jet Zero program, and now NATS and GAIN. What keeps you going?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me back. And it is really good to be back here and talking about a different sustainability initiative that's important. So for me, I think aviation just keeps changing. And it's something I've always been so passionate about. You know, I was first inspired by aviation actually when I was only 6 years old, and I heard about a flying charity that actually saves lives, because so many people in the world actually rely on flight and on aviation just to live. I heard about that, was so inspired that I really just knew then I wanted to go into aviation and have positive impact.
Wow. And isn't this the charity you're now working with as well?
So I am indeed. I'm on the board of that charity, and then I'm also setting up a new charity which will help harness aviation support, I hope, for more humanitarian flying.
I think we'll come back to this, because this is where we ended our last interview, if I recall right.
Yes.
But tell me about, when we talk about sustainability, when you were at the Jet Zero Council, there are things we can do today. Mm-hmm. There are things that will take a lot of time to get done, hydrogen planes, electric planes. SAF is today, but it's short of supply and it's expensive. But operational efficiencies, air traffic control, navigation is stuff that can be done today. And that's what you're working on now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And why I'm really excited about this is because whilst all these other things that people talk about a lot, like new types of fuel, whether it's SAF, hydrogen, battery electric, or whether it's new kind of aircraft technologies or more aircraft efficient or better airports, All of those things is recognise they are going to take quite a long time. While SAF is out there, there's not enough of it, nowhere near. Hydrogen, unfortunately, the I think announcement from Airbus early this year means that that's likely to be delayed in terms of transatlantic flight. So I'm excited about working on airspace because that's something that is already realising efficiencies and can be done now. And in fact, I've now, I'm working part-time for NATS, and what is exciting is all the work that NATS has already done. So NATS actually has been regulated on its sustainability and efficiency since 2012.
And for those who don't know, what is NATS?
So NATS, is the National Air Traffic Service in the UK. So essentially it manages all the UK airspace.
Okay.
So NATS has actually been regulated on its sustainability and efficiency since 2012 by the UK CAA, which many people don't know. And during that period, it's obviously developed kind of tools and insights. And ultimately, it models, what aircraft have done and in terms of their actual routes compared to what would be considered to be the optimum possible route as well.
This is interesting, and I've had a few pilots, someone from NATS on the show. One instance that comes to mind is a former captain from British Airways I was speaking with, and I was talking to him about how my plane tends to circle above Heathrow before landing and how it probably burns a lot of fuel, and why can't we do something about it? And he said, well, NATS now actually tells him when he's flying across the Atlantic to slow down over Ireland and come down very slowly so that by the time he gets to London, to Heathrow, he doesn't have to circle as much. So, one, because he's flying slower at a lower altitude, he's burning less of fuel, and he doesn't need to circle. And I thought, wow, that's really great. Is this what you're trying to scale?
So that's one of the things, and I'll talk about it in a second, but exactly that, and also helping with that communication with airlines. So you gave that example just there, and it's something that's already been identified from NATS, analysing data, and sometimes it's been working with airlines and seeing actually a particular airline has always flown a certain route, and they did that because they assumed the air traffic that was required by the air traffic controllers, whereas the air traffic controllers assumed that was required by the airline. And then when you actually look at this and go, well, that route's not very efficient, why are they doing it? And they might have been doing it for years, but that communication hasn't happened. And we do have examples of where that communication does take place and then efficiencies can be saved. And that's quite tactical, straightforward things to achieve.
For someone who's not aware of the technicalities here, I thought communication always happens between the air traffic controller and the captain. And the controller just has to tell the captain, you know what, come fly 5,000 feet lower.
So it does, but the airlines will also file the flight plan as well in advance, and it's that you could actually potentially change and file a slightly different flight plan, which then the air traffic controllers would follow, and that's the kind of communication we're looking at.
Okay, so when we talk about the category called operational efficiencies, it's always in all of those airlines' net zero roadmaps, right? Operational efficiencies can be split on the ground and in the air.
Exactly.
The segment we are talking about and you're addressing right now with NATS is in the air.
Exactly that.
And the reality is an airplane doesn't just fly over one country. It's multiple countries, multiple jurisdictions. So this gives rise to your new initiative that you're helping with, GAIN. Tell us about GAIN. What does it stand for and how does it bring all these parties together?
Yeah, so GAIN is called Green Aviation Insights, and essentially it's twofold. One thing is it's a collaboration of different air navigation service providers. So similar organisations to NATS that exist across the world. So there's about 160 of them in the world. So it's bringing that collaboration together using a lot of the experience and expertise NATS has attained, in the last decade. And then it's also the development of a new tool. And that tool will actually be able to have clear dashboards and show efficiencies of airspace. So it will actually highlight to these air navigation service providers how they could actually improve their airspace and realise efficiencies. It will also obviously highlight things like the actual CO2 emissions as well within their airspace, both by individual airlines, by routes, by sectors. You can go down to different levels.
Wow, there's so much to dig deeper. When my team and I were doing the research on this, I would have thought it's NATS plus perhaps the European,
that Eurocontrol.
Yeah, Eurocontrol, or NATS plus something nearby. But you've got Azerbaijan, Malaysia, South Africa. Why are these parties interested? Why are you working together?
Yeah, so ideally we want to increase the growth, and our aim would be to just grow bigger and bigger and get more and more air navigation service providers working together. The reason those got involved were actually they kind of volunteered. So what we've been doing this year is we call them our founding members. So there's 5 in total involved, and those founding members are actually helping us to shape and design the GAIN tool. So they're involved in the collaboration. So we meet every 4 to 6 weeks and we share insights, what's happening in our own areas, but then also are helping to design and say what's the most important thing that they will want to see in the first version of the tool. So that's the kind of the group that are working on that together at the moment.
And what's in it for them? What is the tool promising to offer?
Yeah, so they kind of highlighted, and we did a lot of research over the last couple of years within NATS about what the problems were, what the issues were around sustainability, and they were kind of threefold. So one was just being able to measure airspace efficiency using a common metric. So you can talk about CO2, but it's that common metric. So in other words, that ideal flight path. So that was one of the challenges.
What is airspace efficiency? This is a new concept I'm coming across.
So it's around, you could map out what would the ideal and realistic route be flying from A to B. And that would include considering things like continuous descent.
Yep.
So as well as kind of going the straightest way possible in simple terms, recognizing that you can never fly directly straight. So it's looking at that optimum flight path and then comparing what you actually did and compared to that optimum flight path, and then coming up with that kind of efficiency metric. So that's something that, as I said, NATS have worked on for many years and developed and are still continuing to develop and improve. So it will show that. So that's that consistent metric. The other issue that many of these organisations and countries identified were they were getting increased pressure from their governments and regulators to show what they, managing airspace, are doing to help with the net zero challenge. So they were getting high, and they were kind of struggling to show demonstrable progress in that area. And then the third thing was just that often these air navigation service providers, they have limited resource, they have limited time with their teams. They might have one person or half a person working on sustainability. And again, pulling this data, managing it, say in Excel, plotting graphs, all of that takes time, whereas GAIN will just take the data in and automatically basically populate dashboards for people to use.
This is a tool that has been used by NATS and now it's going global. Is that it? Or is this a brand new tool being built?
So it's a brand new tool that's being built, but it uses, as I said, over a decade's worth of experience and the efficiency metrics that NATS have been developed.
Got it. Interesting. How much of this work is going to be net zero focus versus fuel efficiency and fuel savings focus? Is it overlapping or is it sometimes conflicting as well?
Yeah, so it's absolutely overlapping because obviously the less fuel you burn, it is all about how much fuel you burn and how do you reduce that, because that focus on, that reduces the carbon emissions, but it also as well reduces the amount of fuel burn, and obviously it helps the airlines because it'll make it less, make it more cost effective for them as well.
Right. What is the goal here? Is it to just have lots of air navigation services from different countries working together? Or do you intend to how would you work with airlines and airports, for example, who ultimately implement what you're coming up with?
Yeah, so most air navigation service providers would be having regular meetings with airlines anyway. And that's why GAIN is really helpful, because it can provide dashboards which provide a lot of detail, which, say, an analytical team might use, although you don't actually need analytical experience to work with it. Or it could provide a dashboard that's suitable for a CEO to have a conversation with the CEO of an airline, which will happen as well. So that is all about that communication tool with other stakeholders as well. So the ANSP who's managing the airspace will also need to work with airlines and other stakeholders.
Got it. Are you able to share some of the use cases or specific examples that perhaps some of the founding members have been excited about?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the cases that I mentioned earlier was just simply being able to have that data and being able to see some of the flight paths and see areas where we call them hotspots, so areas where there's particularly high emissions, and then being able to use that in a clear way to be able to have conversations with the airlines. Because as I mentioned earlier, it's quite often that both parties are just continuing doing what they've always done, not realising that there's a better, more efficient way. There's other things. There's certainly the sustainability managers in these organisations are excited to be able to have actually access to things that can show where they could make immediate changes as well in the short term. And then some might also be looking at longer term changes, for example, to their airspace. So airspace modernisation, something that's happening in the UK. Other countries are also looking at airspace changes, and GAIN would be able to, again, highlight areas where actually they do want to kind of make future bigger changes to their airspace.
Given there's so much focus on metrics and numbers, have you estimated what kind of savings in CO2 emissions you're looking at or other metrics you're observing?
Yeah, so in terms of CO2, I mean, we looked at and this is very conservative, but with our current 5 founding members, it was something like over 450,000 tonnes of CO2 a year. And if we went up to 90 organisations, it would be about 9 million tonnes per year. But that's only based on savings 1 to 1.5%. So that's more on the kind of tactical savings. If you then start to introduce things like if countries were looking at making more big airspace changes, which might take several years to implement, then, it just scales and scales. It goes up quite dramatically. Wow. But yeah, based on just 1 to 1.5%, those are the figures we're looking at.
So while the primary tool is this dashboard, are you looking to publish regular reports or research that goes out to beyond just the members?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will be using this because, we will see it as a huge amount of kind of data and knowledge sharing. And then the idea is that we would definitely produce an annual insights report, which would be open to anyone. And then also doing kind of more regular features as well as we develop and people use the tool.
Very interesting. What would you say is the short-term, medium-term and long-term goals here for the organization?
So at the moment, as I said, we've had these founding members, which is great, who've been helping us develop and test the tool as well. So the aim is that next year we'll be launching it. It is a not-for-profit initiative, but it will have a membership fee to cover the costs of the tool and the whole kind of running of the collaboration as well. So ideally, we do want to get a group of organisations joining us, properly from next year. I'm pleased to say we've also already got, in addition to those 5 who are trialling the tool, we've also got 3 other countries joining us as what we call associate members. So with associate members, people can join us just for 3 months to trial the collaboration, trial the tool to see whether it's something they want to sign up for the year. So that would be the idea for next year. We would be looking at, really growing the community. I mean, the ideal would be that by, say, 2030, I would say if we could get 40% of the air navigation service providers in the world, that would be huge. That would be significant.
By 40%, do you mean by sky area, not land area? Or do you mean just the numbers?
I was thinking 40% in terms of the numbers.
In terms of the numbers. Because you can get some large countries like Canada and Russia, and you have a lot of airspace then.
Yeah, exactly. And we do have, our targets and, preference is absolutely some of those significant air navigation service providers as well. But I think it is already, it's already building momentum. The fact that we've managed to get 8 organisations joining our collaboration. They're so interested in the collaboration. They're helping to shape the tool, design what it looks like, which is really invaluable.
The vision sounds really good, and I'm delighted to hear about the initial progress. What are some of the hurdles you see coming your way that you'll have to overcome as you go through this journey?
Yeah, so some of the organisations have highlighted about the kind of data sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously people are very concerned about data. So we have developed data policies. We have memorandum of understandings in place currently that would be covered in the contracts from next year. But some have also said they don't have enough access to the data to be able to share it. And that's where we've said, actually, because GAIN, does work using ADSB data, you don't have to provide data. All we need to know is your airspace kind of boundaries to be able to feed that into the tool. If you can provide additional data, then you'll be able to get additional insights, but it still works without that.
So if the actual countries are not providing this data, this is ADSB, where do you get this data?
So we get it by being visually available through things like FlightAware and other tools as well.
Right, so Cirium,
Yes,
FlightAware,
exactly.
and others. So NAT's already subscribed to this data.
Exactly.
It has this data. So let's say if Malaysia raises its hand and says, you know what, sure, these are my airspace boundaries. You'll get all this data and analyze it for
exactly that. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And if you look at, once again, the future product roadmap, there are lots of interesting things. There's stuff around fuel efficiency, of course, but there's also contrails, and there's increasing consensus among scientists as well as hopefully soon airlines as well that it's a low-hanging fruit, that it's an easy win. Do you intend to integrate things like contrails in the future?
So the first thing I would say is that the whole purpose of GAIN is about this collaboration. So it's about collaborating in designing the tool as well. So that will be those who sign up to be members will basically have a say in what the tool will move to in the future, because we recognise we'll never stay still. We'll always need to evolve the tool and keep putting enhancements and additional features. So assuming those that sign up to be members all agree that contrails or non-CO2 effects need to be included in GAIN, then we would absolutely include that in GAIN. My own personal view is that I would love to see that. I think having a tool which shows both CO2 emissions and contrails side by side would be incredibly valuable, but it will depend on what the members want.
What I also feel is, because it's such a global initiative, members are coming from their own point of view and their own sort of vantage point, which is the same thing, but perhaps you can play a role in educating them of the latest research, both on contrails and other topics as well, that, you know what, this is what's happening. Would you like to take an action on this? Perhaps that could be something.
No, and that's true. So as part of our collaborations initiative, so at the minute we've been, as I mentioned, this year we've been meeting kind of every 4 to 6 weeks. We expect that to continue next year with the membership kind of every 6 weeks. And at those meetings, the collaboration would involve not only the individual organisations sharing insights and, there being general insights on the tool, but also the idea would be to have kind of guest speakers come in and talk about other initiatives as well. Right. So absolutely, things like non-CO2 effects, contrails, bringing everyone up to speed from all these different countries, I think would be a really valuable opportunity.
And are you looking to partner with other organizations like Travelist or GBTA or some of these other non-government organizations that are doing work in this? Or is this likely to be something that you run independently, just trying to gain additional members?
No, it is an interesting point. We have talked about partnerships. It would have to be the right partnership and obviously benefits for each. And that's still kind of something that's on the radar to consider in the future. Okay. But we haven't as yet. We do have, it is worth saying, we do have already CANSO, which is essentially the global organisation to represent air navigation service providers. We have them, they are observers as part of the collaboration. So they're already involved as well, which really helps us.
Okay. And who are the big guys who you would love to have on the table?
Really good point. So I would love to have certainly things like Canada, the US, if that ever happened, Australia, New Zealand, some of those big are definitely there. I was going to say some of the associate members that I know, as well as some of our existing members, but I won't necessarily pull out any of those.
Right. Interesting. For a non-profit organization like this, what is the reason to be? I mean, there can be companies, corporates, There can be the former ones, Jet Zero Council, it's a country. But I'm wondering, what's the deeper motivation here? How do you keep going?
Yeah, and just to be clear, it's a not-for-profit initiative as opposed to it's not a not-for-profit company. It is a not-for-profit initiative, but on the basis that we run it such that the money that comes in is then spent to develop the tool and run the whole collaboration. In terms of the motivation, I mean, it is one of the kind of 4 pillars of NATS, which is around sustainability and net zero. And decarbonisation. So it lines, so NATS kind of set this up initially, but it is really seen as collaboration rather than necessarily, NATS being the owner of it, because it is very much about it being a partnership and working together as organisations.
So all good and fine for initiatives that drive sustainability and fuel savings. But what about initiatives that drive sustainability but increases fuel burn? For example, certain types of contrail avoidance or turbulence avoidance, which currently already happens. In a dilemma like that, what would you do?
Yeah, I mean, that's where this you could probably have 5 podcasts, or if not more than that, on this one subject with environmental specialists who've been involved in and analysing contrails for probably 20, 30 years. So it's a real complex subject, but I do think there's something around the more you can start to display that data and show it in a clear way to understand the trade-offs, the better better position we'll be in.
Right. Never an easy answer, right? On that. Compared to the previous roles you have led, is there a lesson or two that you're bringing to the table now where you would do things differently based on having led multilateral organizations previously?
It's a really interesting point. So I think one of the things that I did with this is just making sure we're all clear on the objectives at the start. So it sounds, and it's often something that people skip over because it's can get a bit boring and dull talking about terms of reference, but being really clear. So everyone who's signing up, which was back in February, everyone agrees what we're trying to achieve, what the focus is, and then also, really importantly, the ways of working. So everyone agrees that, they will help, everyone that's involved will help promote GAIN, for example, that they'll look for other opportunities to talk about it themselves. That's just one way of working around the honesty, transparency, data protection, all of those things. So making sure we're really clear up front. The other thing around this is I really believe there's value in diversity with any kind of collaboration. So trying to get a diverse group. Now, the volunteer ANSPs were already kind of lined up when I took on this role. So, but I think, they are absolutely diverse. That's happened anyway. But I think, again, ensuring that each of that diversity is recognised. So giving everyone an opportunity to speak and giving everyone an opportunity to share and giving, equal time, all of those kind of, I suppose, relatively basic things, but things that can get forgotten can make the collaboration much more effective.
Very, very nice to hear, because ultimately that's how the organization will thrive.
Exactly.
In the long term as well. If I go back to certain use cases and integration, like it's all about how do you implement the changes here? And let's say GAIN provides certain insights. These dashboards are providing national governments and their operators the insights. How do these get translated to the airline level or to the airport level? You mentioned communication. How does that come in?
Yes, so I mean, the GAIN as the dashboard, you can literally just click on something and actually, you could pick out a specific airline. So, for example, many of these airspace providers will be having regular meetings with the airlines anyway. So if they're then having a meeting with an airline, they could print out the part of the dashboard which shows that particular airline and how it's doing in terms of efficiency and carbon emissions and whether there's kind of any hotspot areas. So, for example, it might flag that, I talked about the continuous descent. That's one where it might flag it's highlighting, more emissions than most other airlines on the descent.
So it's a benchmark.
Example. Exactly. So it's actually benchmarking it and giving you that absolute data, whether it's per airline, whether it's in a particular route, or you could do it looking at a particular sector. So it's looking at different ways in which you can actually shape the data and using that.
Uh,
And then it's working out, it should then identify what you could do differently.
Okay, so this is shared in the regular communications meeting.
Mhm.
This is not about integration into the cockpit or integration into the CETA system that the airline is using or something like that.
No, exactly.
Okay.
That's not our plan at the moment anyway.
Right. Very interesting. I would be very curious to see how airlines respond
Mhm.
to this, because on the surface, it seems everyone would love a benchmark like that. Hey, you know what? You're burning more fuel than your competitors on this descent. You got to improve your profile. So everyone benefits there.
Exactly.
And I love the compounding nature of this as well. As you add more countries, everyone benefits even more.
Yeah. And in fact, when I first took this role at NATS, I had quite a few, I know quite a lot of people in the aviation industry. I had quite a few airlines saying, what on earth are you doing at NATS? What are you doing? And then I'd explain about GAIN, and they were incredibly excited. They're saying, wow, this is something that, sounds really, really good in terms of being able to use. So, yeah.
At this point, I want to just see and touch and feel the dashboard.
Yes.
having learned so much about it.
Well, maybe I can come back next year and do a little demo.
Yes, maybe we can actually do the demo. Rachel, the aviation industry has, of course, faced a lot of criticism and greenwashing lawsuits about the claims that they're making. GAIN is about measurement. So how do you ensure that it is transparent, it is real, and you can actually avoid these greenwashing claims?
No, I think it's a really valid point because, I've often said that aviation almost needs its own communication strategy to emphasize all the positive things we're doing, but make sure we emphasize it in a way that doesn't come across as if it's greenwashing as well. So I think it's a really important, relevant point. I do think with GAIN, it's actually easier because you're using basic data. So you are actually using physical data, it's not prediction, and often the greenwashing claims come from predictions or complexities. I won't go into the details of SAF, but things where carbon credits are passed on, that's where it gets complex. I think with GAIN, in some sense, it's simpler because you're using real live data. You're then, saying, what is an actual reality. You're plotting a flight path, which is a reality, all matched with someone else who might have apps where they can track routes. It will all match up. So I think in that sense, it's actually easier to be able to demonstrate what we will be doing and what can be done.
Right. Well, this is very, very exciting, and I love the vision. What excites you most about the future?
So I think if you look at just where we've come, first of all, in terms of sustainable aviation, I mean, it's incredible how much progress has been made. I mean, even just in terms of just aircraft themselves and efficiencies, how much more improved, there was a study done where over 15 years, I think they reckon the amount of fuel burn per nautical mile had reduced by something like 40%,
Yeah, 40%.
just over a 15-year period, which is incredible. So when you think of where we come and the pace of change, and now how much focus there is on sustainable aviation, that for me is really, really exciting. I think with airspace, there's a whole load of other challenges, things like free route airspace, where you can fly kind of more optimal routes. There's so many different initiatives that are happening in airspace as well as in the wider aviation picture. That's what makes me really excited. And I just think the more we can get that message out, especially to those who are not in aviation, the better.
You're also personally very active with the UK aviation scene, the British Aviation Group. What would you advise young professionals looking to build a successful career in aviation in the future?
So I would say first thing is kind of surround yourself by inspirational people and things like mentors. I think really, really helps. I'd say start to kind of get involved. There's a lot of webinars, conferences, things that don't actually cost you any money that you can just do if you just spend a bit of time getting involved in that. And I do really think we need more and more young people. I think, you can achieve, I've always believed you can achieve a lot with a small group of people as long as they've got the right passion, they've got the right commitment, they want to have an impact. And I think more and more young people have that kind of vision themselves now. And I think the more young people we can get into aviation, the better.
Yeah, and it's a sector that we started with this. It's evolving so fast. Metrics are changing, new technologies are coming, that it gives a lot of young people the opportunity to actually shape the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with innovation as well, there's so much innovation in aviation as well. I think it's a really exciting thing. And, you can get involved in aviation, whatever field you're in. That's the other thing as well. People often just think it's pilots and engineers, but of course it's much wider than that.
That's the question I always get. So, are you a pilot? Oh, I'm not a pilot. I love to fly. And I'm not a pilot.
No, it's true.
Yeah. Well, the final part of this interview, you've done this before.
Yes,
so you know
I
what's
have.
coming. It's the rapid fire round, in which let's see if any of your preferences have changed.
Exactly. I
right?
know.
So
I know.
what's your favorite airline, Rachel?
Oh, so I think I'm going to say, this has changed. I would say it's Emirates. I'd like to say a British airline. So I do fly a lot with British Airways. But in terms of just the service and everything else, I just think the music when you get on board the aircraft. The fact that you can
on Christmas they have music.
I do like Emirates. So I'm afraid, yes.
Looks like
it pains me to not say British airline, but yeah.
Perhaps Sir Elton John needs to come up with the boarding music for British Airways.
Indeed, yeah.
Or Virgin.
Yeah.
Spice Girls for Virgin.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's got to be different. Maybe we can send a note both to Sean Doyle and to Corneal.
Yeah,
about boarding music.
Exactly. But having said that, I do fly a lot with British Airways, and if it was, I would choose that.
Since you mentioned boarding music, funnily enough, I recently flew Ryanair for the first time in my life.
Oh, yes.
And they had the funkiest boarding music ever. Like, I really wanted to groove to it, sitting down there for 20 minutes after boarding had completed. But they had a really good boarding music. I had never known.
I haven't flown with Ryanair for absolutely years. So definitely when I flew with them, there was no boarding music at all. But
it was my first time. I pulled the trigger and they had boarding music. Which is your favorite airport?
I would still say, favorite airport. No, I would still say I think Perth, as in Western Australia, and that's purely because I flew into it when I was training as a pilot years and years ago. Yeah.
Okay, Perth.
And it's beautiful because you've got the sea on one side. Yeah. It's just beautiful.
Very nice. Favorite city?
I'd still say Perth, Western Australia to live. I know.
Okay.
It's either that or possibly San Diego. Or Scottsdale, Arizona.
Okay, let's see.
Top is Perth.
It seems like you're the desert kind of lady.
I am. I do love the desert.
I see Perth, exactly. Scottsdale, Arizona.
Desert and sea. So that's why I like Perth.
All right.
You've got both.
What do you do in your free time?
So I do like to go to the gym with my husband and swim and travel, and I do quite a bit of charity work.
Yes, that's right. We heard about Africa earlier.
Yes.
And I will plug the old episode as well because we speak about that charity a decent amount. What is it that you like to learn?
I love learning new things all the time. So, I mean, I've learned so much this year's being at NATS, about airspace. I just love learning new, interesting things. Yeah.
Okay.
I think every day is, they say every day is a school day. And I think I would literally do say I learn something new every day.
Fantastic. What is the best advice you've received?
Probably from my late father, who always said, just give it a go, Rach. So even when things seemed impossible and we were from a low socioeconomic background, he would always say, give it a go.
Give it a shot. Very nice. And finally, if we are speaking 1 year from now and we are popping champagne, what are we celebrating?
So I would say loads more air navigation service providers have signed up to GAIN.
Okay.
So yes.
Sounds good. Well, Rachel, all the best for your new mission.
Thank
Lovely
you.
to have you back on the podcast. And this is exciting because this can have a real impact on making aviation sustainable today, not 20 years from now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sustainability in the Air. Aviation is one of the hardest to decarbonize industries, yet there are multiple paths to get to net zero. Awareness is key to a green future. So please give us your support to help our Sustainable Aviation Insights reach a wider audience. You can do this by sharing this episode on your network, on LinkedIn, Twitter, or even WhatsApp. Or perhaps you might consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to this episode. You can start a conversation with us by writing to us at podcast@simpliflying, that's simply with an I.com. And for more content on sustainable aviation, please visit our website green.simpliflying.com and join the movement. Sustainability in the Air is an original podcast by Simpliflying. The show is produced by Juraj Toth in Slovakia. Dirk Singer is our Director of Sustainability, who leads research for each interviewee out of Greenwich, UK. Shubhadeep Pal is our Supervising Editor based out of Mumbai and Singapore. The articles are written by Ayushi Badola in Dehradun in India and Meera Hull in Montreal, Quebec. Creative design is led by Ligia Esteve in Montreal. Baiba Drimen is the project director for the show based out of Valencia, Spain. Special thanks to Wendy Sim in Singapore. And I'm Shashank Nigam, the CEO of Simpliflying and your host. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.